is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Israel and Iran have broadened their strikes against each other as the conflict between the two nations enters its fourth day. Israeli officials say several people have been injured in the latest round of Iranian strikes. Fires were observed at a power plant in the vicinity of Haifa after Iranian forces launched a ballistic missile attack on the northern city's port infrastructure. Loud explosions rang out in Jerusalem early Monday amid spiraling conflict between Iran and Israel. On this issue, I'm joined by Dr. Raz Zimmt, Director, Iran and Shiite Access Research Program, Institute for National Security Studies, INSS, and Research Fellow, Alliance Center for Iranian Studies, Tel Aviv University. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, is it about regime change or the nuclear bomb?
I don't think the regime change is the Israeli objective. I think that it's very clear that the Israeli main objective is to degrade as much as possible Iran's nuclear program. But of course, if during this military activity by Israel, the Iranian regime is going to be weakened, that's even best for Israel. But this has never been, and I don't think it's going to be Iran's main objective.
A lot of people are saying that this regional conflict can become bigger. So if it can become bigger, it will have the impact on business, trade, oil, a lot of things which go beyond the vicinity of Israel and Iran.
I think it really depends on Iran. If Iran decides to expand its activities to regional assets, to US bases in the region, perhaps to some strategic assets in the Persian Gulf, then of course it could expand and escalate. But right now, I have to say, I don't think that the Iranians want to take the risk of dragging the United States into this war. And so I think it's going to be more likely that we will see the continued war between Israel and Iran rather than Iran trying to escalate it further and dragging other players in the region. But of course, we cannot rule out the possibility that if this war continues, at the end of the day, we might find ourselves in a much more escalated situation.
Why was this strike needed, or why was this strike so much important to state of Israel? Were other methods not available to the state of Israel?
Well, according to the Israeli officials and the Israeli intelligence, what provoked this Israeli attack 3 days ago was intelligence showing that Iran was, in a very concerning way, making some major significant progress in its nuclear program. And I don't mean by that the enrichment capabilities, which are all well known, as exposed also by the IAEA inspectors. But what I mean is that we got some evidences for Iran's progress in what could be referred to as the weaponization part of Iran's nuclear program. And Israel was very worried and concerned with the possibility that if these activities continue without an Israeli retaliation, we might find ourselves sooner or later in a situation in which Iran is just days or a few weeks away from producing nuclear weapons, and then trigger the Israeli military action.
So how long do you think that this conflict can persist? Because ultimately what's happening right now is that both nations have deployed their air assets and ballistic missiles against each other.
Yeah, I hope it won't last for too long. I think Israel still hasn't achieved all of its goals in the war, especially targeting Iran's nuclear facilities and other strategic assets, for example, when it comes to Iran advanced missiles capabilities. I hope that after a few days or a number of a week or 2 weeks, it will be able to reach a ceasefire. But I think we have to take into consideration that due to the fact that it's very unlikely that Israel will be able to destroy Iran's nuclear program, especially without US involvement, Israel might be required in the future to continue its efforts to make sure that even in the day after the war, Iran will not try to reconstitute its nuclear program and especially break out to nuclear weapons.
Why do you say, sir, that Israel will not be able to completely dismantle the Iranian nuclear program without US help?
Because there are certain elements within the Iranian nuclear program, for example, the enrichment site in Fordow, which is in the mountain, very much under the ground, and it was very clear from the beginning that it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for Israel due to its operational capabilities and constraints to deal with this facility, for example. It will require the US special operational capabilities to deal with this facility. And in addition, as we all know, Iran's nuclear facility is very robust, it's very significant. The knowledge and technology are inside Iran. And so nobody questioned the fact that there is a possibility by Israel to significantly delay Iran's nuclear program, perhaps by even more than 1 year, but not to fully destroy Iran's nuclear program.
So, do you think that China and Russia can covertly assist Iran against Israel?
China can certainly assist Iran with components of the missiles capabilities and production of missiles capability. There have been some reports in recent months about Chinese efforts to assist Iran in this issue. The Russian support, I'm not too sure. We know that following the Israeli attack against Iran in late October, there were some reports about the possibility that Russia will try to help Iran with the rehabilitation of its aerial defense system. But at the end of the day, Russia needed those capabilities for its war against Ukraine. And therefore, I would assume that the Russian support might be more in the intelligence or perhaps political assistance to Iran rather than a clear military support for Iran.
So your comments on the fact that Iran tries to make it as a war between Islam and the West, but Iran itself has become a pariah state in West Asia.
Yes, I agree. There is no doubt that the Iranian challenge or the Iranian threat is much more than the nuclear issue. It involves missiles capabilities, its malign regional activity, its support for terrorism, the deliveries of missiles and drones to Russia. But at the end of the day, from the Israeli point of view, the number one priority has always been Iran's nuclear capabilities, which pose a potential existential threat to the state of Israel. And therefore, what provoked and triggered the Israeli action was the progress made in Iran's nuclear program.
So Israeli society runs with the rhythm of the Israeli government. It's a democracy. You can oppose your own prime minister. You had shaky coalition. You had a number of elections in last 3 or 4 years. Iran is a theocracy. Do you think that the possibility that the people can rise against the mullahs can happen in Iran?
Well, it can certainly happen, but I think that in order for that to happen, something has to change within the equilibrium, if you like, between the Iranian regime and the Iranian population. Meaning that the Iranian regime has to be weakened enough, and the Iranian people has to go to the streets and renew its protest against the regime. Whether it's possible, it's possible. But right now, I don't see any concrete evidence for major immediate threats to the stability of the regime. Of course, there is a possibility that if this war continues, the security and military and intelligence establishment inside Iran is going to be weakened, and that perhaps together with the Iranian people's resentment towards its regime might pave the way in the future for some kind of a change. But I always believe that if there's going to be a change in Iran, it's going to become or to be available from within rather than from outside.
I mean to say, it was only 1979 the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran. So my question to you is that despite so much of repression, despite so much of economic hardship, despite being cut off from the world, how is this regime able to sustain itself? Is it through the sheer brute force of Basij and IRGC?
That's one of the ways for Iran to maintain its stability. I have to say that for many years after the Islamic Revolution, this regime certainly enjoyed some level of legitimacy. And the majority of the Iranian people for many years even supported the regime. But especially during the last few decades, there has been growing gap between the Islamic Republic and the majority of the Iranian population, mostly the younger generations in Iran. Of course, that was also encouraged by the economic crisis in Iran. And so I would say that while most of the Iranian people certainly does not support the Iranian regime, the regime is still capable of dealing with the protests which erupts every few years in Iran, mainly through force. But also we have to understand that it's very difficult in a state like Iran for the ordinary Iranians who have to make sure that he brings money and supports his family. It's very difficult for him to go and risk his life in attempting to bring out a regime change in his country. It's very difficult to carry out a revolution in a state like that. It might happen in the future, but it's certainly not easy.
From a military perspective, Israel has been very effectively able to deal with Hamas. You have been very effectively been able to deal with Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have been very able to deal with the Syrians, the Bashar al-Assad regime. You have taken care of three threats, but how is the threat which emanates from Iran different from what you dealt in Syria, Gaza, and Lebanon?
So it's more complicated to deal with a country like Iran, which is very distant from Israel. It's of course more complicated for the Israeli Air Force to operate in Iran, although we can certainly see the major significant accomplishments of Israel in the last few days. It's more difficult to deal with Iran, a country of 90 million people. This is not Lebanon, not Syria, certainly not the Gaza Strip. But at the end of the day, I think that what we see in recent days is not just the Israeli preventive act, which managed to decapitate many Iranian senior military officials, but we've had major successes when dealing with strategic assets in Iran, both the nuclear assets, the missiles capabilities, other command and control capabilities, intelligence headquarters inside Iran. But again, as I said, it's not going to be easy. But I'm not sure that, again, due to the fact that the main objective of the State of Israel is to mostly deal with the nuclear program in Iran, not like in Gaza or in Lebanon. Israel can certainly try and I think succeed in delaying Iran's nuclear program by a significant time, and during that period also to try and degrade other strategic assets connected to Iran's military and security apparatus.
Thank you, Dr. Zimmt. Thank you, Dr. Raz Zimmt, for speaking to us on News9. It was very lovely to have you with your perspective and deep analysis of the situation that is unfolding in Israel and Iran.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.